The sound of my son's laugh was the last thing I heard before my perfect Saturday shattered, replaced by the shouts of police and the chilling accusation that I had kidnapped my own child. The best sound in the world is my son's laugh. It's a pure, uninhibited burst of joy that can make even the worst day feel like a distant memory. On that Saturday, his laugh was echoing across the manicured lawn of the town park as he chased a rogue frisbee. Leo, my 9-year-old boy, with his shock of blonde hair and a constellation of freckles across his nose, was my entire world. We had just come from his favorite ice cream shop. He'd gotten the triple chocolate fudge apocalypse, and I was nursing a simple vanilla cone, watching him burn off the sugar high. It was a perfect afternoon, the kind you wish you could bottle up and save for a rainy day. I didn't know the storm was already on the horizon. It started with a single police cruiser pulling up to the curb, its tires crunching on the gravel path. I didn't think much of it. Cops patrol parks. It's their job. I'm an FBI agent, have been for 12 years. I respect the badge, I understand the work. But then a second car pulled up behind the first, then a third, blocking the park's only exit. My internal alarm, the one honed by years of counter-terrorism work, started to hum. This wasn't a patrol, this was a response. My grip on my vanilla cone tightened. Leo, oblivious, had finally caught the frisbee and was trotting back towards me, a triumphant grin on his face. Before he could reach me, car doors flew open. Officers started piling out, not with the casual demeanor of a routine check, but with the tense, coiled energy of a high-risk takedown. My blood ran cold. There were 4, then 5, then 7 of them. 7 cops for a dad and his son in a park. My training screamed at me. Assess the threat, identify the target, maintain situational awareness. My heart screamed something else. Protect Leo. Leo, come here. Right now. Walk, don't run, I said, my voice dangerously calm. He saw the officers, and the smile vanished from his face, replaced by a confusion that quickly morphed into fear. He dropped the frisbee and scurried behind my legs, his small hand clutching the back of my jeans. The lead officer, a burly man with a thick mustache and eyes that seemed to dismiss me before he even spoke, pointed a thick finger in my direction. "You, on the ground! Hands behind your head! Now!" His voice boomed across the peaceful park, turning heads. I could feel the stares of other families, the whispers starting like a brush fire. Humiliation was a hot flush on my neck, but I pushed it down. Survival and de-escalation were all that mattered. "Sir, there's no need for this," I started, raising my hands slowly, showing they were empty. I said on the ground," another one shouted, his hand resting on the butt of his sidearm. I looked down at Leo, who was trembling. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered. "Daddy's just going to talk to the policeman." I knelt, not because he'd ordered me to, but to get down on Leo's level, to look him in the eye. That was my mistake. They saw it as defiance. Two of them rushed forward. One grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back with a brutal efficiency that sent a shock of pain up to my shoulder. The other shoved me forward, and I went down hard on my knees, my ice cream cone splattering on the pavement. Leo let out a terrified cry. "Daddy, stop hurting my daddy!" "It's all right, son. Just stay back," I yelled, my face pressed into the damp, sweet-smelling grass. The cold steel of handcuffs bit into my wrists, ratcheted tight enough to cut off circulation. They hauled me to my feet. "What is this about?" I grunted, trying to keep the rage out of my voice. "You've got my son here. You're scaring him to death." The mustached officer got in my face. His breath smelled of stale coffee. "We got a call. A concerned citizen reported a black man with a white child who looked to be in distress. Said it looked like a kidnapping." The words hit me harder than any physical blow. A kidnapping? Because my son, the son my wife Sarah and I adopted as a newborn, the boy whose every scraped knee I'd bandaged and every nightmare I'd soothed, didn't have the same skin color as me. "He's my son," I said through gritted teeth. "My name is Marcus Cole. I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in my wallet, back right pocket. Run my name." One of the younger officers snorted. "A federal agent? Yeah, right. And I'm the King of England." They started patting me down, rough and impersonal. I could see another officer approaching Leo, who was now sobbing, his small body shaking. "No!" I shouted, struggling against their grip. "Don't you touch him! Get my wife on the phone! Her name is Sarah Cole! Her number is in my phone!" The lead officer ignored me. He pulled my wallet out, flipping it open. I saw his eyes pause. I knew he'd seen my FBI credentials, my badge sitting right there next to the picture of Sarah and Leo. For a second, I thought, okay, this is it. The colossal screw-up is over. They'll apologize and let me go. But the officer's expression didn't change. It hardened. He snapped the wallet shut and shoved it into his own pocket. He leaned in close to my ear, his voice a low, venomous whisper meant only for me. "We'll sort this all out downtown," he hissed. Then he straightened up and gestured to the officer standing near my crying son. "Take the boy. We'll let Child Protective Services figure out who he belongs to." The world narrowed to the sound of my own ragged breath and Leo's piercing screams. A primal rage, white-hot and absolute, surged through me, a force I hadn't felt since my days in the sandbox overseas. My training, my years of discipline, evaporated. I was no longer an agent. I was a father watching a predator approach his child. I bucked against the two officers holding me, my muscles screaming in protest. "Don't you dare touch him!" I roared, my voice cracking with desperation. "Leo, Daddy's right here. It's okay." But it wasn't okay. The officer knelt, trying to offer Leo a hand, and my son recoiled, scrambling backward on the grass, his face a mess of tears and snot. The sight broke something inside me. They were treating him like evidence, a stolen object. They shoved me into the back of a cruiser, the door slamming shut with a sickening finality. Through the wire mesh, I had a fractured, nightmarish view of the scene. I saw the officer finally scoop up my kicking and screaming son, strapping him into the back of another car. I could hear his muffled cries of "Daddy" over and over again. I slammed my shoulder against the plexiglass divider, shouting his name until my throat was raw, but they couldn't hear me. Or they didn't care. The mustached sergeant, the one who took my credentials, got into the driver's seat. He didn't even look at me. He just started the car, and as we pulled away, I watched the cruiser carrying my son turn in the opposite direction. Every inch of distance between us felt like a physical tearing in my chest. The ride was silent, thick with my powerlessness and their smug authority. At the station, they paraded me through the squad room, the perp walk. I've seen it 100 times from the other side. Now I was the spectacle. The black man in respectable clothes, cuffed, head held high out of pure defiance. I could feel the eyes on me, the quick judgments being made. They processed me with a slow, deliberate inefficiency. They took my fingerprints, my photo. They took my phone, my watch, my wedding ring. Every question was laced with condescension. "Occupation?" the booking sergeant asked, barely looking up from his form. "Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation," I said, my voice flat and cold. He finally looked up, a smirk playing on his lips. He glanced at the arresting officer, Sergeant Miller, I'd learned his name was, who just shook his head slightly. The booking sergeant chuckled and wrote down "unemployed." They threw me in a holding cell. The concrete bench was cold, the air thick with the smell of stale sweat and disinfectant. Time became a blur. Minutes felt like hours. All I could see was Leo's terrified face. All I could hear was his voice screaming for me. Where was he? Was he alone? Was he with strangers in some cold, sterile office? Had anyone called my wife? Sarah would be losing her mind. She'd have been expecting us back an hour ago. Finally, the cell door clanged open. It was Sergeant Miller. He wasn't holding a notepad or a file. He was just standing there, arms crossed, filling the doorway. "Your wife is here," he said, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "Causing quite a scene in the lobby. Very protective." A wave of relief so intense it almost buckled my knees washed over me. Sarah. Thank God. Let me talk to her. Let her see Leo. This is all a misunderstanding, Miller. You saw my badge. He stepped into the cell, letting the door swing shut behind him. The space suddenly felt dangerously small. "I saw a piece of tin in a leather wallet," he said, his voice dropping low. "Could be fake. We have to check these things out. Thoroughly." He leaned against the wall, studying me. "You know, we get calls like that one all the time. Man doesn't look like he belongs with that kid. 9 times out of 10, it's nothing. But you gotta be careful. Especially when you see a guy like you driving a brand new Audi, living up in the North Hills district with a little white kid, it raises flags. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a choice. My success was my crime. "Get my supervisor on the phone," I demanded. "Asac Phillips, Quantico. You have my credentials. You know exactly who I am." Miller just smiled. "We're running it down. Things take time. In the meantime, Child Protective Services has placed an emergency hold on the boy." "A hold? What the hell does that mean?" "It means," he said, savoring each word, "that until our investigation is complete and we can definitively prove a parental relationship, the child remains in the custody of the state. He can't be released. Not even to your wife." The words were a calculated cruelty, designed to gut me, to leave me with nothing but the cold terror of the state swallowing my child whole. For a moment, it worked. The fight drained out of me, replaced by a hollow, sickening despair. Miller watched my reaction, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. He had won. He had broken the uppity black federal agent. But he didn't know my wife. Sarah is a force of nature, a brilliant corporate lawyer who can dismantle a hostile witness without raising her voice. Her causing a scene meant she was methodically taking apart their entire precinct from the lobby. As if on cue, a frantic commotion erupted from the squad room. Shouted orders, the sound of heavy feet running on linoleum. Miller's smug expression faltered, replaced by confusion. The door to my holding cell was yanked open, but it wasn't a cop. It was a man in a tailored suit, his face grim, his eyes radiating an authority that made Miller physically shrink. It was my boss, Asac Phillips. Behind him stood the chief of police, his face pale and sweating. "Marcus," Phillips said, his voice tight with fury. "Are you all right?" He was already unlocking my handcuffs with the key he'd obviously just been given. "Where is my son?" was all I could manage to say, the words scraping my throat.
"Your wife is with him,"
the police chief stammered, wringing his hands. "He's safe. It was a terrible mistake, a communications breakdown." I didn't even look at him. My eyes were locked on Miller, who was trying to blend into the concrete wall. Phillips followed my gaze. "Officer," he said, his voice dropping to a deadly quiet, "you are to surrender your badge and service weapon. You're on administrative leave, effective immediately. Don't leave town." I walked out of that cell, past a squad room that was now dead silent, every officer suddenly fascinated by their paperwork. Sarah was there, just as Phillips had said. The moment she saw me, her face crumpled in relief. And then I saw him, Leo. He was sitting in a chair, clutching a teddy bear some well-meaning officer had probably given him, his face tear-stained and exhausted. He looked up, his eyes widened, and then he launched himself off the chair. "Daddy!" I caught him, lifting him into my arms and burying my face in his hair, breathing in the scent of bubblegum ice cream that still lingered. I held him so tight he grunted, and I didn't care. I could feel his little heart hammering against my chest, and mine hammering right back. He was safe. He was back in my arms. The storm had passed, but the wreckage was everywhere. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Our lawyer, a man who normally specialized in patent law, but who took our case with a righteous fury, called it a civil rights atom bomb. The city immediately tried to settle. We refused. We wanted discovery. We wanted depositions. We wanted Sergeant Miller on the stand. We got footage from his body camera, which he had conveniently forgotten to turn on until after I was in the car, but the audio was there from the beginning. We got the testimony of the concerned citizen, an elderly woman from the park, who admitted under oath that the only thing distressing she saw was a black man having a nice day with a white child in her park. The city saw the writing on the wall. The public outcry was deafening. An FBI agent, a decorated veteran treated like a common criminal, and his child taken from him based on nothing more than the color of his skin. They settled for $5 million. Every single one of the 7 officers involved was fired and stripped of their pensions. Sergeant Miller was later charged by the Department of Justice with civil rights violations. He was convicted. We used the money to set up a trust for Leo's future and donated a significant portion to foundations that fight for police reform and help wrongly accused parents. The money was never the point. It was about accountability. It was about the name Marcus Cole, meaning more than just unemployed on a booking sheet. It's been a year. The nightmares have mostly faded for Leo, replaced by the usual kid anxieties about monsters under the bed. For me, the healing is slower. The trust I once had in a fellow officer's badge is gone, replaced by a cautious vigilance. But last weekend, we were back at that same park. It was our way of reclaiming it. I was pushing Leo on the swings, pushing him higher and higher until he was soaring, a tiny silhouette against the bright blue sky. And then I heard it. That pure, uninhibited burst of joy, his laugh. It echoed across the lawn, full of light and life. It was the sound of our victory, the sound of our resilience. It was, and always will be, the best sound in the world.